One aspect of managing up is just being in constant and regular touch with your management about understanding what they want, making them understand what's going on with your business or product. So, for instance, one aspect of managing up in this context is sending regular status updates. And that is something earlier in my career I didn't feel like I needed to do because I hate them. Frankly, I hate writing status updates. And that's just not me. There are people who love writing status updates. There's no right or wrong. I'm not saying that it's wrong to write status updates. I just dislike it. The reason I dislike it is actually because I have ingrained the LNO framework. And in my mind, a status update is rarely an L task, or at least it was. I'll tell you how my thinking changed on this. But a status update was rarely an L task, usually an N task, and often enough an O task. So I'm like, why am I spending time on this when I have 6 other clear L tasks to do? And they're also more fun for me. So there's both the analytical aspect and the fun aspect of it. Later on, as I became a PM leader, what I did is I delegated some of those things to others, which is, I don't like it, but this person on my team loves it and it's necessary. So why don't you write it? And then that gets to the other point is sometimes somebody on my team would write the status update and then I would just say, okay, yeah, you just send it. Some managers make their team members write it and then the manager sends it. In my case, I was just like, yeah, you just send it. Now it turns out that also ended up being a problem sometimes because I'm a leader who likes to operate behind the scenes. I don't want to be front and center. Again, there's nothing wrong with being a leader who wants to be front and center, but people have different preferences. I like operating behind the scenes. My philosophy for team leadership is that my teams are doing great, both business-wise, success-wise, quality-wise, and happiness-wise. But nobody can point to anything I did to make that happen. Because the way I like to manage is make people feel that it's their idea, make people feel that they did everything, even though I may have significantly nudged or influenced. That was my leadership style. So anyways, for a variety of reasons, this is an example where, yeah, you need to be in constant touch with your management and leadership. And you need to figure out async ways like status updates or synchronous ways. Oftentimes, you have to over-communicate that reassurance if things are going well, instead of just letting the numbers speak for themselves, or just relying on the quarterly business review or whatever other processes to share progress. Certainly use more time in one-on-ones with your manager to keep communicating wins and overemphasizing them. Even if your manager knows about it, sometimes just emphasize that because some managers don't remember everything, they can't keep state and so on. So that aspect is very important. Second aspect of managing up is escalating when you need to and making clear to your management where you need their help and what aspects of your job are really difficult. I'll share my personal experience. I'm a huge believer in high agency, and that's what made me who I am. We all double down on our core strengths and our core kind of attributes that make us really good at whatever we do. And so I've definitely doubled down on the high agency thing, which all sounds great. But here's the problem when you have very high agency, which I have had for as long as I can remember. When you have very high agency, the challenge is that you're not afraid of any problem and you make every problem, oh, I'm going to solve this. And an aspect of high agency is self-confidence. So you also have that confidence of, yeah, I'll be able to solve this. And so because of that, what happened is that I did not escalate to my management enough. And I also did not complain or just express frustration to my management enough as I was doing my various jobs. Because I felt, yeah, there's a challenge. The chief legal officer or this general counsel or whoever else is not on the same page, but I'll get him or her on the same page. It's fine. It's okay. Give me 2 meetings with the person, they'll be on the same page. So why bring it up in the one-on-one when I can bring up other things that are perhaps more important, like some hiring thing or headcount thing or some promotion thing for somebody on my team or some other issue. So I did not escalate enough. And perhaps even more importantly, I did not share with my management proactively what the really difficult parts of my job were. Because when we express frustration and when we tell our manager, oh, this is not going right and this cross-functional partner is not listening and whatever else, what ends up happening is we are trying to problem solve with them, but we are also conveying to them that, look, my job is hard. And then they have concrete examples of how your job is hard. And at some point, say, especially in startups and mid-stage startups, even late-stage startups, what will happen is, because it's very fast-paced, things are changing all the time, your manager's busy with 50 other things. Plus, sometimes your manager doesn't have necessarily all the skills yet to be a great PM leader. Now, there's a reason they are your manager. They're exceptional at certain things. All I'm saying is they don't have all the skills to be a great PM leader yet. They're just still developing. In those situations, when they don't get this visibility into your frustrations, your challenges, etc., and you're not escalating that much, all of which I was guilty of, what ends up happening is they don't actually understand that your job is so hard. When you are a really strong PM leader, when you understand product management very deeply, and when you've had sufficient experience managing PM, you can be quite intuitive about this. Meaning, you don't need somebody on your team to tell you their frustrations to understand how hard their job is. You need some basic understanding of the shape of the problem, the team they are dealing with, the main issues they are facing, whether it's regulatory or privacy related or security related or compliance, whatever it is, whatever set of issues they're facing, the personalities they're facing. You can quickly, intuitively get to the point of, okay, this person's job is actually really hard. This person's job is okay, medium difficulty, and this person's job is on the easier side of the spectrum. You don't need your reports to give you anecdotes on a weekly basis for you to create that model. Early in my career, especially at Google, I had these kinds of managers who had a very high intuition about this stuff. So I did not get dinged very much for not sharing with them all my problems and not escalating enough and whatnot. But later on, it became more of a problem. In some cases, particularly at Stripe, there were people managing me who had less product management expertise than I did. Now, again, there was a good reason why they were my managers. The point is, then they found it much more difficult to understand it. A third aspect of managing up is really aligning your product as much as you can with what your management's priorities are. If you're high enough in the company, it's usually the CEO's priorities. Aligning your project, your product, your team as much as possible with their stated current priorities. Now, this one has two components to it. One is, are you actively soliciting what they're worried about? Are you actively soliciting what their priorities are? Are you actively soliciting how you can help them, etc.? That's one aspect of this. And the other aspect is then actually doing the alignment, realigning your priorities, your strategy, etc., with whatever is being proposed at the higher levels. And I don't mean this in the macro sense. Of course, if the company priorities for 2023 are ABC, everybody aligns there. But the people who are very good at managing up are constantly checking in. They're much more aware of what is the CPO thinking right now, where is their head right now this week, and then 2 weeks from now, and then 3 weeks from now. They also try to join certain meetings where they can get that signal, that real-time signal. Because again, in a fast-paced organization, many things happen very quickly. So herein lies the problem. And this is why this stuff is sometimes hard. And certainly this is why it was hard for me. I was very good at understanding what my manager wanted and understanding how I can help my manager in his or her goals. But sometimes that felt a little random, both sort of my manager's goals, or maybe my manager wasn't even aware what their goals were. And sometimes the company, like the trend du jour, we're going to do this. And if you've been at a company long enough, you know, oh, it's not actually going to work. They're going to say this month, and then next month they're going to do something else. I've seen this movie enough times before. It's not coming out of cynicism or disdain for anybody. It's just coming out of an understanding of the organization. So in those cases, I would try to shield my team from this stuff. Here's an interesting thing that happens in particularly medium-sized, several thousand people, to larger tech companies, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Something gets announced, then teams are told, oh, everybody needs to figure out how you can make this initiative successful. Everybody in this org, figure out how can you make this Project Sigma successful, whatever Project Sigma is, and then create your proposals. In this case, what happens is there are some teams who are implicated by Project Sigma who can have a very meaningful role in making Sigma successful. But for most teams, the role is minor, and it is a little bit of signaling, basically, which is, oh, we are so committed to Sigma that everybody is going to try to make Sigma successful. But then if your team is only going to marginally be helpful or actually not helpful at all in your view. So in my view, when that was the case, I was like, I'm not going to bother with this stuff. Like, why should I? This makes no sense. We're not going to be able to influence Sigma or whatever in a way that is expected. So I would try to get out of it. And again, I would usually be successful in getting out of it because of my ability to influence my manager and other people. But that doesn't mean that did not leave a bad taste, right? So it's really important to remember that when you do this, or certainly when I did this, there was a cost to it. I wasn't managing up well in this situation. And you have to decide. I'm not saying do what I did, because certainly some of these things have been minor blips in my career. Like, oh, I should have gotten a higher rating, but I did not. Whatever. Again, I've done extremely well, luckily. So I have zero regrets about anything. But I'm just sharing my experience of some kind of minor blips along the way and what were some of the reasons for those. So you have to decide. If you decide that you're going to just show complete alignment, that's fine. That does come at the cost of perhaps your product will not do as well, or your team will feel whiplash sometimes as you change priorities based on what management wants. So it does come at a cost, but even that, sometimes that cost is not that high. We might think that's very high, but sometimes it's not. And there are benefits to your career of doing that. So that's another aspect of managing up. So hope that helps.